Here's a problem I hear from almost every SOC manager I talk to. You've got a tool that genuinely improves how your analysts investigate. It surfaces findings faster, it encodes the methodology, it reduces the context switching, and it lives completely outside the workflow your team has spent a number of years building. So now you've got a choice. You need to force the analyst to leave your workflow to use the capability, or watch that capability go underutilized because adoption is, well, too much friction. Neither option is really great, and both are incredibly common. That's the problem we're solving with the recent release of the Command Zero API. Let me set some context. Most mature SOC environments have built a reasonably sophisticated SOAR workflow. The alerts fire, enrichment runs in parallel, goes after threat intel, some EDR host context, and even some prior incident history. The ticket gets created and analyst reviews it. That enrichment layer is genuinely valuable. It reduces the mechanical work of pulling all of that data from multiple consoles. And for a lot of alert types, it's really enough to make a triage decision. But there's a class of alerts where enrichment isn't enough, where you actually need an investigation, where the right question isn't, is this IP known bad, but is this credential compromised? And if it is, what's the actual blast radius? Where you need to understand not just the immediate event, but the access patterns, the associated non human identities, the lateral movement potential, and even the 90-day alert context history for that principle. Now, in the traditional model, that investigation work can only be triggered by a human decision. Analyst reviews the enriched ticket, decides it needs or warrants a deeper analysis, and then opens up a number of different consoles and starts working through a sequential handoff. Every alert that warrants investigation goes through that bottleneck. But when you have a high volume environment, and let's face reality, most mature SOC environments do, that bottleneck compresses the time available to investigate those alerts that actually matter. So here's what's architecturally interesting about encoding investigation as a callable API. It changes when the investigation can happen in the workflow, not just whether it happens. In the sequential model, investigation is step five: alert, enrichment, ticket, triage, investigate. Each step ends up waiting. In the parallel model, the investigation is step two. It's running alongside enrichment, not after it. Your SOAR playbook triggers a Command Zero investigation at the same moment it's querying threat intel and also pulling that EDR context. By the time an analyst opens the ticket, the investigation findings are already there. That compression matters most in the first hour of an emerging incident when scope is unknown. Affected identities may be plural, and the pressure to understand that blast radius quickly is the highest. There's a second architectural dimension worth calling out: what you're actually connecting when you integrate Command Zero via API. Most enrichment integrations connect data sources. They pull raw data from a system of record and surface it in a ticket. But the Command Zero integration is different. The investigative methodology built into the platform, the pivot logic a tier 3 analyst would apply when they find a suspicious authentication event, the specific questions that they would ask about non human identities and service accounts, the way they structure findings for analyst consumption. That methodology is what travels through the API. You're not just connecting a data source, you're pulling expert investigative logic into your automation layer. And what that ends up meaning for your tier 1 and tier 2 analyst capacity: a junior analyst reviewing a ticket with Command Zero investigation output is now working with findings structured by expert methodology. They're not being asked to replicate tier 3 judgment. They're reviewing the output of an investigation that applied that judgment on their behalf. And they're making that decision based on the structured findings. That's a meaningful shift in how institutional knowledge flows through the SOC. Now, I want to take a note on the API design philosophy because I really think it's relevant. We're not shipping a sprawling API surface and calling it done. The first release covers core platform capabilities, and we're going to be expanding that coverage progressively. We're going to be adding more granular access to investigative functions as we validate the integration patterns that actually matter most in real production environments. And that's intentional because API surfaces that try to expose everything at once are difficult to integrate against and harder to reason about. Instead, we're building depth incrementally. We're starting with the capabilities that produce immediate value in the integration security teams are already trying to build. And on auditability, every finding surfaced through a Command Zero investigation is traceable. That doesn't change when an investigation will be invoked through an API. The audit chain, the full record of what the investigation examined, what it found, what it surfaced to the analyst, all becomes part of that record. In a world where regulators, IR firms, and cyber insurers want to understand the decision chain behind every response action that matters. So, if you're building SOAR playbooks that need investigation grade enrichment, or you're evaluating how to reduce the gap between alert and analyst ready context, or even thinking through the architecture of a more connected SOC, the API documentation is linked below. We're building this with production teams. And if you're working through integration patterns in your environment, reach out to us. That's the exact kind of feedback that's shaping where we take the API surface next.